It's the 2022 World Cup. It's Senegal's players.
Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin, and today we will be looking at Senegal's squad for the 2022 World Cup. For those following on YouTube, we'll run a very simple graphic where we list the names and you can see the spelling of the names. And for those on podcast, it's the same broadcast, but we're going to repeat the names a few times to help listeners familiarize themselves with the player names so that when they appear on the field, you know who they are. So the way we do this is that we go through the players and share some of the data we've collected in our files. And using that data, we try to predict how likely the player is to make the team. So we've categorized them into definite, likely, possible but unlikely, and seems to be off the squad. And we've also added a couple of categories with retired or injured, just covering the big names that have retired. We'll also try to determine which player will be the starters and which will be the substitutes. And that's as much as we can do at this point. But as the rosters are being published, we're going to do an update episode. So that'll probably be in November. And that will essentially be going over our predictions and updating them based on the games played to that point and revealing which players were selected. But sometimes there are new players that come in at the very end, and we'll also do an update on the team. So keep your eye out for those, as I said, probably in November. Meanwhile, here, both before and after we go through the players, we'll make some comments on how the team was before the Cup and how the team looks going into the Cup. So let's begin, and we're actually going to begin with some takeaways from the previous podcast, because we did a previous podcast for the recent 2021 African Cup. Confusingly, that was in January 2022. So I'll probably just refer to it as the recent Cup, but keep in mind if I say 2021 African Cup, it was actually in early 2022. And we looked at the formations of the teams going into that Cup, and we found that they generally went with a 4-2-3-1 formation. So four backline defenders, two defensive midfielders, three attacking midfielders, and one out-and-out forward. But we've seen actually that since that time, they have mostly changed over to a 4-3-3 formation. So three central midfielders, probably a bit more defensive-minded, and then three on the attacking line, but those outside attacking roles will probably be filled by attacking midfielders or by wingers. So looking at the African Cup, we saw that they went with that 4-3-3 in 5 of the 7 games. And in game 2 against Guinea and game 6 against Burkina Faso, they went back to the 4-2-3-1 formation. And during this podcast, I'll suggest a reason for that, although I'm not 100% sure. In the after the African Cup in 2022, January 2022, they have since played 4 games. Well, they've actually played a lot more than 4 games, but some of them are just in local cups. So 4 games with the A team, we'll say. And 2 of those were in March against Egypt. Those were the final playoff round for qualification for this Cup. So they went with a 4-3-3 formation in both of those games. The other 2 games they played were African Cup 2023 qualifying games. And those were in June, the first at home to Benin and the second away to Rwanda. And they went with back to a 4-2-3-1 at home to Benin, and then a 4-3-3 away in Rwanda. So to summarize, over the 11 games they've played, 8 of them have been 4-3-3 and 3 of them have been 4-2-3-1. So just a takeaway from the first podcast is that they seem to have switched formations going into the African Cup. The other takeaway is that we saw that it was a steady group of players when we were doing the podcast in the lead up to the 2021 African Cup. And what that means is that they have far few players kind of that they consider and use than most other teams do. So it's a fairly small field of players that they're playing with. And also in the lineup, they seem to not change that much. So we'll consider this podcast to see if that is changed or if they've brought in a bunch of new players. All right, well, let's move on to the squad. Just give me a second here. Okay. Okay, so we begin with the manager, and that is Aliou Cisse. Aliou Cisse has been their manager since 2017. He's done quite well, actually, and he was managing them through these 2017 African Cup, 2018 World Cup, and 2019 African Cup, where they reached the final. They lost to Algeria there in the final, and then the African Cup 2021, which they won. So quite successful as a manager and also quite successful as a player. He was the captain of the Senegal team in 2002, most notably in the 2002 World Cup, where they actually passed the group stage and reached the quarterfinals, where they lost to Turkey in extra time. So successful as a player and successful as a manager is Aliou Cisse. So of course we don't expect that to change before the World Cup begins here. So we'll put him down as a definite. We'll just run through the candidates for goalkeepers and then go back and talk about them. So our definite candidate, and this is based really on how many games they've been playing for the team, primarily based on that, is Edouard Mendy. Edouard Mendy, a definite candidate. Seny Dieng, a possible candidate. We have 3 possible candidates. Alfred Gomez is the second. Alfred Gomis. And the third one is Binguru Kamara. And we also have one name as a possible but unlikely, and that is Alioune Badara Fati. So we'll come back and talk about these players. So going back to Edouard Mendy, we consider him the definite candidate because he played all of their games since January, since the African Cup 2021. Starting all of their games. And he was also the starter for the African Cup 2021. However, he was out with COVID for games 1 and 2. So he was replaced by Seny Dieng there until he was fit to come back, which he did in game 3. So he played games 3 to 7. He was also the okay, well, we'll give a little bio information and then talk about his tournament history. So Edouard Mendy is 30 years old. And I should just give a note on the ages that I'm giving here. In the soccerphiles, I really only have the year of birth rather than their actual age. So I kind of convert that to their age. But actually that conversion means that's the age they're going to be at the end of this year. So they might already be that age. They'll probably be that age by the time the World Cup comes around. But it's possible if they were born late in the year that I'm making them 1 year older than they actually are. But there we have it. I got to go with that. So he was born in 1992, so he's 30 years old, and he's been actually with the team since 2018, so a bit of a late starter there. But by now he has 25 caps for the team, and he currently plays with Chelsea in England. He joined that team in 2020, and before that he was with Reims in France, and played all his career up to moving to Chelsea in France, where he was born. He was actually also eligible for Guinea-Bissau, which he initially joined, but he changed before playing any games for them. Kind of interesting there. So he joined in 2018 and pretty much immediately became the starting keeper for the 2019 African Cup. He started and finished games 1 and 2 there, but he got injured, broke a finger in the warm-up for game 3, and was replaced for games 4 to 7 because they reached the final, replaced by Alfred Gomez. Okay, and now we will move on to some of those secondary players. We'll talk about Seny Dieng next. He was the one who, well, we're kind of viewing him as the second backup keeper because he replaced Edward Mendy in the 2021 African Cups for those first 2 games when he was out with COVID. So Seny Dieng himself has actually played none of their 4 games. Edward Mendy played them all. Since the recent African Cup, but he was on the bench for the last 2 games, but for some reason was not selected for the first 2 games, those playoff games. So a bit of doubt as to whether he's really the backup keeper there. But he has been with the team since 2021 and has 3 caps, just 3 caps. And sorry, I'm just looking at his age. It's 28 years old. So again, fairly late joiner to the national team there. He plays in England with Queen's Park Rangers since 2016. However, he was loaned out quite a bit in the early years with them from until 2020. But I do believe he's the starting keeper for them now. He was born in Switzerland, and his early clubs were with Switzerland. He really kind of moved up because he was playing with some very small teams. I barely even know their names. Some of the teams that he was with in England or loaned to. But now he seems to have risen up to maybe the backup keeper, but we consider him a good possibility for the squad. So 2021 African Cup was his first tournament, and as mentioned, he was the backup keeper. Another candidate is the player who took over in 2019 when Edward Mendy broke his finger, Alfred Gomez. So Alfred Gomez recently has played none of their 4 games, of course. Mendy has started and finished them all. But he was injured for those 2 playoff games against Egypt, and on the bench for the 2 African Cup 2023 qualifying games. So perhaps he has moved into the second starting position here. He is 29 years old, and he has been with the team since 2017 and has 12 caps. And he currently plays for Reims in France, and he was in Dijon in France before that. But prior to that, he was mostly in Italy. He was with the Torino Youth Club in his youth and with a few Italian clubs before he moved to play for Dijon and Reims in France. So in terms of tournament history, he was on the squad for the 2018 World Cup. But he was a bench player there, didn't see any action. And in 2019, as mentioned, on the bench for the first 2 games, but took over the starting position when Mendy broke his finger. So actually, just in covering this right now, I'm kind of thinking that he may be the first backup keeper. The other candidate, and probably less likely than the other two, is Bingaru Kamara. So Bingaru Kamara was on the bench for 2 of their recent 4 games and not selected for 2 others. And he's very new to the team. His first cap was in 2020, and he has 2 caps. But he's not young. He's 26 years old. So he's like all of the other goalies, in fact, coming in kind of in their mid-20s rather than being a young player there. He plays for Strasbourg in France since 2017, and he has not been a part of any tournaments. But again, kind of getting involved in the games after the recent Cup, but a couple of games before that. The final candidate is Alioune Badara Fati, and he is he was on the bench for one of the 4 recent games and not selected for the 3 others. He's been with Senegal since 2021, and he is a young goalkeeper, so he's 23 years old, and he has 1 cap and no goals. He plays for Casa Sport in Senegal, so I think his 1 cap may have been for one of those local tournaments. I should check on that, but I didn't beforehand. But he was a backup keeper for the 2021 African Cup, so got in there. They brought actually 4 goalkeepers to that cup, so he in my mind was the 4th, and maybe he's the 5th now. Okay, so in summary, I'm going to say Edward Mendy is definitely the starter there, and Seny Dieng, Alfred Gomez, I would say probably the backups, but there is a chance that Bingaru Kamara and even less likely Alioune Badara Fati will make it into the squad. Okay, on to central defenders. I'm just going to clean up the graphics for those following on YouTube there. And on to central defenders. And again, I'll go through the candidates. And actually this time I'm going to start with a player who is off the squad now, but who was the central defender for the World Cup. Not the central defender, because there's usually 2, but was a staple central defender for the World Cup in 2018 and the starter in the African Cup 2019, but now seems to be off the team. So I'm gonna put him under retired, although it's probably the case that he's just off the team. And I'll talk about him first. In terms of definite candidates, we have Kalidou Koulibaly, and we have Abdou Diallo. And then as a likely candidate, Pape Abdou Cissé. And as a possible but unlikely, we have Abdoulaye Seck. And this is a bit of an interesting case, but I'm coding him as seemingly off the squad. But Alpha Junku, I'll talk about him because it's a bit of an intriguing case. So let's go back to the beginning, and we'll begin by talking about Salif Sané. So as I mentioned, he was a starter in 2018 and 2019, but his last appearance was in November 2020, and he hasn't made an appearance since, which is saying the same thing, I suppose. But anyway, a bit of a surprise that he is kind of suddenly off the team there, and it leaves a gap in the defense. So I won't go through a lot of bio for Salif Sané because he probably won't be there. But I will say that he had 38 caps for the team and is currently only 32 years old, which is, possibly still has a few years in him as a player. Especially central defenders can often go to, say, 35 years old. But he seems to be done for the national team, and I wonder if he's done at the club level too, because he played for Schalke in Germany from 2018 to 22, but he's currently unattached. So he may be whatever the reason is for that. He's not playing at the club level anymore either. So he definitely seems to be out of the picture, although he was a staple up until 2019. Alongside him was Kalidou Koulibaly, and he remains a staple in the squad. He started all 4 of their games since the 2021 African Cup. And Kalidou Koulibaly has been with the team since 2015, and he has 62 caps, and he's 31 years old. And he recently moved to Chelsea in England. So alongside Edward Mendy in the defense there, Mendy joined in 2020, he joined in 2022. Prior to that, he was with Napoli in Italy for 8 years, and he's a French-born player, so he grew up playing with French teams. And he was with Metz, and then he moved to Genk in Belgium, Napoli in Germany, and now Chelsea in England. In terms of tournaments, he has been with the team since 2017. So joined in 2015, but nailed down the starting position in 2017, and played that position in the World Cup and in the 2019 African Cup. For the 2021 Cup, recently, last January, he was out with COVID, just like Mendy, for games 1 and 2, but then assumed his starting position on his return when he was fit for game 3, playing all the way through to the finals. So he's been kind of a staple as central defence alongside Salif Sane, at least until 2021, where obviously there was a gap with Sane missing. And in our previous podcast, we were not sure if he was going to be the player to fill the gap, or whether Abu Pape Cisse or Abdoulaye Seck was. I think we considered him the most likely, and it turned out to be the case, as he started and finished all 7 games in the Cup, lining up as a central defender, and also started 3 of their 4 games since. He wasn't selected for 1 game. I'm not sure why, but definitely seems to have taken the position. So he's only been with the team since 2021, even though he's 26 years old. So like a lot of the goalies, really just joining the national team in his mid-20s. He has 17 caps and 2 goals. And he has recently, no, not recently, he's with Paris Saint-Germain in France since 2019, and he was with Borussia Dortmund before that, and has played for other fairly big teams, Mainz in Germany and Monaco in the French league. He was born in France and kind of came up through the French system, but his first tournament was the African Cup 2021, where again we thought he was maybe going to be the starter, and he turned out to be. And now, so he definitely seems the starter alongside Kalidou Koulibaly, and they kind of rarely change that. So the 2 candidates we thought might be in the race for that position. The first one is Pape Abou Cisse. So he has played 3 of their 4 games, but started only 1 of them since the recent African Cup, but he was on the bench for 1 other. We consider him likely, that looks more like possible, but we consider him likely just because of a lack of other candidates. They'll probably bring 4 or 5 central defenders tournament, and he seems to be the third in line. So he's been with the team since 2018, and he has 12 caps and 1 goal. And he was born in 1995, so that puts him at 27 years old. He plays for Olympiacos in Greece since 2017, although he was loaned to Saint Etienne in France in 2021. He was born in Senegal. A lot of the Senegalese players were born in France, but he was born in Senegal. And he was selected for the 2019 African Cup, but he was on the roster, but saw no action there. And in 2021 African Cup, he actually started and finished games 1 and 2, replacing Kalidou Koulibaly, who was out with COVID. And when Koulibaly returned, he went to the bench and was just a substitute in one game, coming in quite late. Okay, so again, we consider him probably likely to be chosen, but certainly not one of the starters for them. Abdoulaye Seck is even less likely. We now have him as a possible but unlikely. When we did the podcast before the last African Cup, we had him as likely alongside Abdou Diallo and Pape Abou Cisse, but he hasn't been playing with the team as much. He was on the bench for 2 of their 4 recent games and not selected for 2 others. And in the 2021 African Cup, he was on the roster, but actually was not even on the bench for any of the 7 games. So he's on the roster, but not on the bench there. So actually, I think I'm going to move him up to possible because he has appeared on the bench in a couple of recent games there. But still, and also there's a kind of a lack of central defenders. So it's quite possible that he will fill in the role, but certainly be on the bench. However, one more candidate is Alpha Junku. So he's a bit of an interesting story. He appeared for the national team on the bench in November 2020 and hasn't been a consideration since, but he may be an up-and-comer. He's 21 years old now, and he plays for Granada in Spain, but he's been loaned out to Barcelona, and I do believe it's Barcelona's B team, since 2022. So obviously there's a bit of interest in him. And he actually played for Spain's under-17 team, so and then for Senegal's under-20 team. So it could be the case that both Spain and Senegal are vying for his attention there, and he's still in a position to decide because he hasn't played any formal games for the national team. So again, if he was a strong consideration, I think we would have seen him by now, but perhaps they've invited him and he hasn't decided. But even though he seems to be off the squad here, I don't know. I'd like to move him up to a possible unlikely candidate again, since they do seem to have a lack of options in this position. So in review of central defenders, I'm going to say Kalidou Koulibaly and Abdou Diallo will definitely be the starters. And I think it's looking back, I think Abdoulaye Seck will be selected because there's really no other options available, and Pape Abou Cisse will almost certainly be selected but be on the bench. And it'll be interesting to see whether Alpha Junku comes into the squad. I mean, it is his opportunity to attend a World Cup, so that may be attractive if Spain and Senegal are vying over him. Okay, let's move on to the left back position, and I'll summarize them first. So we have Saliou Cisse as a definite candidate, and we have Fode Ballo-Touré as a likely candidate, and that's all we have. So it's it's likely that both of them will be on the squad. And we'll talk a little bit about which one seems to be the starter. Saliou Cisse has played all 4 of their games since the African Cup. That's starting 2 of them and subbing in for 2 of them. And in the African Cup 2021, he was out with COVID for game 1, but assumed a starting position for the remaining games all the way to the final. So he has been with the squad since 2012, and he has 39 caps. But he's actually a little old at 33 years old. And currently he's unattached to a club. He was with Nancy in France since 2019. And he played for teams in France through most of his career. Actually, his first club was Tromsø in Norway, and then he was with youth clubs in Senegal, but played for a few French teams until recently, and he's unattached right now. He played in the 2017 African Cup, but he only started game 3, which was a B team game in that cup, and then he wasn't selected for the 2018 World Cup, but that was due to injury. Just 2 days before their first game, he got injured in training. That's quite unfortunate. But even in the 2019 African Cup, he wasn't a starter in that tournament. He also played just in game 3. So only in 2021 did he seem to become a starter. The other candidate who is likely is Fode Ballo-Touré. And Fode Ballo-Touré started 2 of the 4 games since the African Cup, so just like Saliou Cisse there, and was on the bench for the other 2. But Saliou Cisse was subbed in, whereas Fode Ballo-Touré wasn't. So maybe that gives Saliou Cisse, I think I've been saying Cisse, but it's Cisse, a slight edge there. Also giving him an edge is the fact that even though Fode Ballo-Touré started the 2021 African Cup, it was because Cisse was out with COVID, and Cisse took over the position once he got back. So it seems like Cisse is the first choice for starter. But Fode Ballo-Touré plays for AC Milan in Italy, so he's a strong candidate. And he's been with Senegal since 2021. He's 25 years old, and he has 13 caps and no goals. And as I said, he plays for AC Milan in Italy. He was with Monaco in the French league before that, and before that Lille and the Paris Saint-Germain B team. So he actually was with the Paris Saint-Germain youth club for 12 years, from 2005. That would be from 8 years old. And he was born in France. But the 2021 African Cup was his first tournament. So again, a little bit late in joining the team. And I would say it's a fairly close race between those 2 for the starting position. But we're giving Saliou Cisse the edge just based on what we talked about there. And there are no other kind of candidates in the picture there. All right, moving on to right backs. They did seem to have trouble settling on a position for right back. So we're actually going to begin with another player who held the position beforehand, but is now off the team. And that player is Moussa Wag, or could be pronounced Moussa Wage, I'm not sure. But we will talk about him, and then we'll move on to the candidates. Another player actually who held the position but now seems to be off the team, Lamine Gassama. So we'll talk about those 2 before we look at who seems to be holding down the position recently. And the most likely candidate there is Bunasar, so we consider him likely for the World Cup. And Ibrahima Mbaye, who we consider possible for the World Cup, alongside Yusuf Sabali, who we also consider possible. And there is one player who seems to be off the team, El Haj Balde, kind of an outside candidate there. We'll talk about him too. So let's begin with the two players that were holding the position down. He was the starter in 2018 World Cup, but he lost his position after the first two games. And he was a starter in the 2019 African Cup too. But guess what? He lost his position after starting two games there too. So obviously they were never really satisfied, it seems, with him as the starting right back. So he played from Senegal from 2017 to 2020, last appearing for the national team in November 2020. And during his time, he had 21 caps and got one goal. But the surprising thing is he's still only 24 years old. So he could make a comeback into the team. And I must say, I'm not sure why he is kind of suddenly out of the picture. He plays for Gorica in Croatia, and he moved there in 2022 from Barcelona in Spain. So I'm guessing that is a drop in his performance, because moving from a big club like Barcelona to a fairly small club like Gorica is really a step down. Even when he was with Barcelona, he was loaned out. So I won't talk much more about him, except to say that he seems to be off the team. I suppose, given his age, he could be considered an outside candidate. So I'll actually move him to seems to be off the squad rather than retired. The other one who is seemingly off the squad is Lamine Gassama. So he was the starter in 2017, and he was on the bench in 2018 World Cup, appearing on the bench appearing only in game 3 there, after Musawag was lost his starting position. And he was also the one who replaced Musawag for the 2019 African Cup. However, he didn't make the 2021 African Cup. He only played 2 of their 10 games in the lead up to that cup. So he last appeared, but he did actually come back in 2021 for an appearance in June of 2021. That was the last time he appeared for the squad. So just quickly, he has been on the squad since 2011 and is 33 years old, so possibly heading towards retirement anyway, and he's currently with Stade Lausanne in France. Again, we'll kind of cover him in more detail if he happens to make the squad in November. But now the candidates that seem to be filling the position are Bunasar. Well, definitely filling the position, because he started all 7 games in the 2021 African Cup, and he started 2 of their 4 games since. However, only one of them was a starter as the right back. The other was as a left central midfielder. So maybe not as assured as all that, because he wasn't selected for 2 of the games. But in terms of no, I'll talk about that club affiliation after I give the bio data. So he's been with the team since 2021. So he kind of came in and took over the position, as they seem to be dissatisfied with Musawag and even with Lamine Gassama. So now, since 2021, he has 13 caps. But he's not a young player. He's 29 years old, so yet another player joining the team a bit later on in their career. But he's done very well recently. He was born in France, and he played for teams in France, Metz and Marseille, and has recently, no, not recently, 2020, made a move to Bayern Munich in Germany. So he definitely seems to be getting better with age, or moving up in his career with age. So we have him as a likely candidate here. But the fact that there's no one in front of him probably really means he's a definite candidate. The ones behind him are just at the possible level. The first one is Ibrahim Mbaye. So he last appeared in the 2021 African Cup, so hasn't even been on the bench for any of the 4 games since. And in the 2021 African Cup, he was a starter, lined up as a right back. Oh, okay, I see. He lined up as a right back in games 1 and 2, and then lost his starting position. And then Bouna Sarr, I was a bit confused because Bouna Sarr started all 7 games, but I see he lined up as a midfielder in games 1 and 2, and then moved to the right back position for the remaining 5 games. So Ibrahim Mbaye has been with the team since 2016, but only has 8 caps in that time, and is currently 28 years old. He plays for Bologna in Italy, but was with Inter Milan before that, from 2012 to 2015, and he's been with Bologna ever since 2015. However, it took him until 2021 to make it to a tournament, and as we said, he started and finished games 1 and 2, and then lost his starting position. Okay, the other candidate at the possible level is Youssouf Sabaly. So Youssouf Sabaly actually returned after a 19-month absence in March 22 to start 3 of their 4 remaining games in that position. And he was on the bench for the other one. So I wonder if we should almost move him up to a likely position, because we see that Bouna Sarr sometimes plays in the midfield. But the reason I had him as a possible was that he wasn't on the 2021 African Cup squad, having last appeared before that in November 2020. So when we did the podcast last time, we had him as seemingly off the squad, and we were confirmed by him not being selected for the squad. So he seems to have made a bit of a comeback there, and he's been on the team since 2017 and has 24 caps. He's 29 years old and plays for Real Betis in Spain. He was born in France, and like a lot of other players, kind of grew up through the French system. He actually was with the Paris Saint-Germain youth club for 10 years himself, but quickly kind of moved to other teams in France and now to Spain. So actually, I see that he was with Paris Saint-Germain from 2011 to 2017, but he was loaned out to other teams in France. Then he moved to Bordeaux and then to Real Betis. So he was a starter in the 2018 World Cup, and for the 2019 African Cup here. So I'm definitely going to put him a little bit higher here, from possible to likely. I don't know why he was off the team for a period, but he seems to have come back almost into the starting position there, having played 3 of the last 4 games in that position. So Youssouf Sabaly, the other candidate who had moved up to likely. The last candidate is El Hadji Balde. So El Hadji Balde There's actually a bit of disagreement among my sources here, because one of my sources has him playing um, two World Cup qualifying games in September 2021, but the other has no national team involvement for him. Anyway, I have him as seems to be off the squad. He's been with the team since 2019 and has 9 caps and 2 goals, according to the one source that I'm relying on, and is 29 years old. And he plays in Senegal. So I think possibly some of those 9 caps are local tournaments. He's never played in a senior tournament there. So to be honest, now that I'm telling you about it, I'm not even sure why I have him on the list. But we do have him on the list as a seems to be off the squad player. So that's quite a few players to talk about for one position there. And in summary, I would say actually when I started talking about it, I had Bunasar as the definite starter, and but now I've moved up Yusuf Sulabali to kind of alongside him. I think Bunasar will definitely be a starter, but he may start in the midfield, and Yusuf Sulabali take over the role of right back. And I think Ibrahima Mbaye will be on the squad, but will probably be on the bench. Let's move on to midfielders. So that kind of completes the defense. And we'll move on to midfielders. And I have a category actually for general or versatile midfielders, because midfielders tend to kind of move around a bit anyway, but there are some midfielders who go from left to right, from defensive to attacking. So I put them in this category of versatile midfielder. And the one we have here is Badu Ndiaye, who I have as a versatile midfielder / defensive midfielder. However, he seems to be off the squad now. He really was a fixture, and when we did the previous podcast, we had him as a definite candidate, and we were shocked when he wasn't selected. And the reason is because he was a starter since the 2017 African Cup. And was a starter in 2019 African Cup. He was on the squad for the World Cup 2018, but he was a backup on the bench there, appearing only in game 2, although he did start that one. Okay, so I won't go into too much detail, but he played with the team from 2015 to 20. He's 32 years old, so still of age to play, and has 32 caps and 2 goals. And he plays for Adana Demirspor in Turkey, who he moved to recently. So still active as a club player, but not so active with the with the team here. He hasn't played. Let me see. He played 8 of their 10 games in the lead up to the 2021 African Cup, but he hasn't played any of their games since. So I'm not sure why he is off the squad, but he is nonetheless. And they don't have any kind of general or versatile midfielders otherwise, but they do have a lot of defensive and central midfielders. So we'll move on to defensive midfielders. And when they move to a 4-3-3 formation, these defensive midfielders move up to that 3-man midfield line. But we've said they played several times as a 4-2-3-1 formation. So these are the players who would be in the the 2-line midfield ahead of the defense there. So the first one we'll talk about is Napoli's Mendes, and we consider him a definite candidate. And then we're going to talk about Pape Gueye, and we have him as a likely candidate. And Mamadou Loum Ndiaye we have as a possible candidate, and then Boubakary Soumare as a possible but unlikely candidate. So going back to the definite candidate is Nampalys Mendy. And he has started all 4 of their games since the recent African Cup. And in that African Cup last January, he was out with COVID for games 1 and 2. So obviously the team had a big COVID problem at the beginning of that tournament. It didn't stop them, though. And he assumed a starting position for games 3 to 7. And he has been with the team since 2021, so the African Cup there was his first tournament, and he has 17 caps and 0 goals. But like so many others we've talked about, he started with the team quite late and is 30 years old now, so basically getting his first his first cap for the team at 29 years of age. He is with Leicester in England, but I haven't seen him on the field that much for Leicester. He was loaned to Nice in 2017 and 2018 and was with French clubs before that. He was born in France. And as I said, 2021 African Cup was his first tournament. So another player kind of coming into form, it seems, late in their career. Moving on to the likely candidate, Pape Gueye. So he has started 1 of their games since the recent African Cup, and he subbed into the other 3. So looks like a substitute for the most part there. He was also subbed into the African Cup in 2021 for 4 of their games. Actually, he was interestingly suspended by FIFA for game 2 of that cup over an ongoing contract dispute. And what happened was he had signed a contract for 2 clubs, and he was being punished for it. And Senegal was upset that he was being punished for it just as the tournament started, because it was actually at the beginning of 2021 when this happened. He signed a contract for Marseille and for Watford and got in a bit of trouble for it. But they actually lifted the ban until later, although I'm not sure when that's going to be, because he has been playing in recent games. But anyway, in my notes here, it says they lifted the ban so he could play in this competition. So I assume that would mean he'd have to serve the punishment later. But after game 2, they managed to persuade FIFA, it was, to allow him to play. There we go. So he did join Marseille in 2020, and he had been with Watford before that. And Pape Gueye is young. He's 23 years old, and he's been with the team since 2021 and has 11 caps. So the African Cup 2021 was his first tournament, and we consider him likely here because he's been a part of all games since, unless, of course, that ban comes into effect. But it would be a bit odd for them to suddenly make it during the World Cup. Okay, moving on to the possible candidate, Mamadou Loum Ndiaye. So he's played none of their 4 games since the recent African Cup, but he was on the bench for 3 of them and not selected for the other. In the African Cup, he was on the squad, but a bench player. He appeared only in game 2, which he started and finished. And he lined up as a right defensive midfielder there. He's been with the squad since 2019, but only has 3 caps and 0 goals, and he's 26 years old. Right now, he plays for Porto B in Portugal. He plays for Porto in Portugal, sometimes with the B team. Since 2019, but actually he's on loan to Reading in England right now, and was on loan to Alaves in Spain before that. So He was born in Senegal, but has spent most of his career in Portugal. He was, kind of in the picture for the 2019 African Cup. But he wasn't selected. But he was for the 2021 African Cup, as I said, just a bench player. So maybe making his way into the team there. And given, again, the lack of candidates they have all over the field, the fact that he's possible here may boost him up into being chosen, because they don't have a lot of other players to choose from. The final candidate at defensive midfield is Boubakary Soumer, and he has no appearances. He just attended a training camp in February 2022, which was after the recent African Cup. And he is, as I say, no caps, but he is 23 years old, and he plays for Leicester in England. Again, not a player who I've seen on the field. He moved to Leicester in 2021 and was with Lille in France before that. He was born in France. So, again, hasn't been involved in any of the recent 4 games, but may come into the picture, especially given how few candidates they really try out. Okay, moving on to central midfielder, and I said I would talk about a possible reason why they switch from a 4-2-3-1 to a 4-3-3 formation, and the only reason I've been able to suggest is that when Idrissa Gueye is not there, they seem to go to a 4-2-3-1 formation, but that's a bit speculative. Anyway, the central midfielders, we do have Idrissa Gueye as a definite candidate, and we have Cheick Kouyaté as a likely candidate, and Pape Sarr, or Pape Matar Sarr, also as a likely candidate, Mustafa Name as a possible candidate, Joseph Lopi as a possible but unlikely candidate, and Pape Cheikh Diop as a player who seems to be off the squad. We'll give a few details on him. Let's go back to the top with Idrissa Gueye. So we have him as a definite candidate. He actually scored one of their goals in qualifying, and he started 3 of their recent 4 games since the African Cup, and subbed into the other. So when he's available, they use him. He was a starter in the African 2021 Cup, but he's a bit of a roving midfielder too, because he played a central attacking midfield role in Game 6. Otherwise, he lines up sometimes on the left midfield, I'll say left central midfield in the 4-3-3, or a right central midfielder. So he is a veteran with the team. He's been with them since 2011, and he has 93 caps and 7 goals, and is 32 years old here, actually 33 years old. He plays for Paris Saint-Germain in France, and was with Everton in England before that. So he moved to Paris Saint-Germain in 2019. Everton for 3 years before that, and Aston Villa before that. And he actually said he wants to be called Ghana, Gana, rather than Idrissa, but I still hear announcers calling him Idrissa Gueye, so he's having trouble changing his name there. His first tournament, even though he got his first cap in 2011. His first tournament was in the 2015 African Cup, and he was a starter there, and all the way through the African Cup 2017 and World Cup 2018. Oh, sorry, I was kind of getting mixed up maybe with someone else. Actually, all the way through 2019 and 21, he's also been a starter. He was named to the team of the tournament in the African Cup 2019, even though he got a red card in that tournament. but he was very outstanding in that tournament, and is really kind of a key figure for them in general in the midfield. But as I say, when he misses games, they tend to revert to a 4-2-3-1. Okay, let's move on to Czech Kouyaté. And he tends to be a defensive midfielder. So when they do a 4-2-3-1, he goes back into the defensive midfielder. And actually, he is defensive-minded player because he played as a central defender in the 2019 African Cup. And he was a starter in the 2021 African Cup, although he didn't start all the games. He was he was not starting in, I believe, 2 of the games there, maybe one of them. He started only, though, 1 of their 4 games since the recent African Cup, and he was subbed into 2 games and on the bench for 1 other. So that's why I'd moved him down from definite to likely, because he does tend to miss a few games here and there. In fact, in 2019 African Cup, despite being the captain, he wasn't a starter. He was subbed into game 1. And gained a starting position from there. So it may be that they preferred someone over him for game 1 who got injured quickly because he subbed in at 23 minutes. Czech Kouyaté, so he was the captain of the team, but he isn't anymore. Koulibaly is. He's been with Senegal since 2012 and has 62 caps and 4 goals. And he is 33 years old. So we're beginning to see that they have quite a few older players on the team. He recently moved to Nottingham Forest, who got promoted to the Premier League, and so they bought him along with a whole whack of other players in 2022. Before that, he was in the Premier League with Crystal Palace for 4 years and West Ham for 4 years. And he came to England from Belgium, from Anderlecht in Belgium. I think his first tournament was the 2015 African Cup, and he's basically been a starter. He was actually captain as early as the 2017 African Cup there. All right, well, we'll move on to the next likely candidate, Papa Mate Sarr. And he started 2 of their 4 games, 2 of their 4 recent games since the recent African Cup, and subbed in for 1 and was on the bench for 1. So always being called up, but not necessarily starting. And that was the case in the African Cup 2021, where he was on the squad, but appeared only in game 6, where he was subbed in at 78. So didn't see a lot of action in that tournament. And that actually was his first tournament, and he got his first cap in 2021. He's very young, actually. He's just 20 years old right now, and he has 8 caps and 0 goals. He's with Tottenham in England, at least on paper. I don't think I've ever seen him play for Tottenham, and he was loaned to Metz in 2021-22. So maybe we'll see him on the field for Tottenham. But again, a very young player. And we have him as likely here because he's been playing those recent games, but that would be as a substitute. Okay, the next player is Mustafa Name. Mustafa Name has played none of their 4 games since the recent African Cup, but he was on the bench for 3 of them and not selected for the other. He was also on the roster for the African Cup 2021, but he didn't see any action there, just on the bench. So he's been with Senegal since 2020, but like a lot of other players, kind of a late joiner because he's 27 years old. And he's only got 5 caps for the national team. So he plays for Paris FC in France. That's a much smaller team than Paris Saint-Germain. Um, uh, Yeah, and as I say, the African Cup is his first tournament. So, really, being on the bench for 3 of the last 4 games is kind of his claim to being named to the squad, and we have him as a possible there. Joseph Lopi has also been on the national team since 2020 and has 7 caps. So a similar profile to Mustafa Name, except he's a bit older at 29 years old. So again, another player joining in his mid to late 20s. He last appeared in the 2021 African Cup, where he was selected to the squad and subbed into 2 games. But yeah, hasn't really made strong inroads into the team. But since he hasn't been selected since the African Cup, we consider him possible but unlikely. Just going to check what we had him down as when we did the last podcast. We had him down as a possible because he had played 4 of their 10 games in 2021 and was on the bench for 2 others in the lead up to the Cup. But he actually didn't play the last 4 matches in the lead up to the Cup. And though he was selected, he was on the bench. Now he hasn't played the last 4 matches since. So possible, but unlikely. Pape Cheikh Diop is our last candidate. He is a 25-year-old player who's been with the team since 2020 and has just 3 caps. But he's never played in a tournament, and he last appeared for the national team on the bench in March 2021. So that's about a year and a half ago. So we'll just leave him as kind of a name just in case he pops up, but that doesn't seem like it's going to happen. So in review, in the central midfield, we have Idrissa Gueye, who is a definite, Cheikhou Kouyaté, and I'm going to say Idrissa Gueye as a starter. I'm also going to put Cheikhou Kouyaté as a definite and as a starter. I'm going to put Pape Matar Sarr as, I think he'll make the squad, but he'll be a substitute. And I wouldn't be surprised if they choose one of the others, Mustafa Name or Joseph Lopi. And among those 2, Mustafa Name seems the more likely. Okay, moving on to left midfielders. We don't have any players coded as a left midfielder. Of course, the coding is a bit of a guessing game. It doesn't mean if they're coded as a left midfielder that they're always going to be stuck in that position. Players move around a lot. And when a team has a situation like this where they don't have a player coded as a left midfielder, they'll often just have a player in another position move into it, which, come to think of it, is perhaps why, who is the player? Bouna Sarr has moved into the midfielders. Maybe they have a bit of a lack of players as kind of defensive-minded midfielders. So we move on to right midfielders, where we only have 1 candidate, and we have him as possible but unlikely. So not a lot of players in these positions. So it looks like central midfielders will probably fill the role there. Now, the 1 candidate we have is Crépin Diatta, and we have him as the possible but unlikely, But when we did the podcast back in earlier this year, or maybe in December of last year, we had him as a definite candidate. And the reason we did was because he was a starter in the 2019 African Cup. He got a fabulous goal there and won Best Player of the Tournament award. So we thought, oh, okay, well, here's a guy who's really made it onto the team. But not so. We were surprised when he was not selected for the Cup, but we found out that he had gotten an injury in December 2021, a cruciate ligament rupture with an unknown return date.
and he hasn't really returned. Um, he's still listed as injured. So I'm going to actually put him as possible because, it looks like they would use him once he gets healthy, having done so well in 2019. However, that's a long-term injury, but he's been out with it for quite a while now, so may make it back in time for this World Cup. Cruciate ligament injury, I believe, usually takes about 9 months to a year to overcome if it's a severe rupture. I'm not a medical doctor, so I'm kind of talking through my hat a little bit. But from other players who's had the injury, that's kind of what I'm going on. So I will give a bit of bio information on him. He's been with the team since 2019, and he has 24 caps and 2 goals. And he's only 23 years old and plays for Monaco in the French league. So yeah, definitely a good candidate, just depending on his fitness there. So actually, I'm going to put him as injured rather than possible. But actually, having talked about him, I kind of feel like he would be a likely candidate if he's fit. Okay, we move on now to the kind of more attacking end of the field and left wingers. So again, we're talking about the 4-3-3 lineup that they often use. So that would probably mean that the left wingers move up to play kind of a left forward role. The left wingers and attacking midfielders kind of move up to a forward role. So we're going to talk about a few players here. Sadio Mane, who we consider a definite candidate, and Keita Balde, who we consider, a possible candidate. I'm a bit surprised by that. I prepared this several days ago, so I've actually forgotten some of the things that I noted. And then seemingly off the team is Mame Baba Thiam, who we'll just make quick mention of. Well, how much do we need to say about Sadio Mane, because he's a huge figure on the Senegal team and in world soccer, to be honest. So he recently made a move to Bayern Munich in Germany from Liverpool, where he kind of became famous. But actually, Liverpool got him from Southampton in England due to his fabulous performances there. And Southampton got him from Red Bull Salzburg due to his fabulous performances there. So, and he was with Metz in France in 2011 and 2012. Probably played well there too. He doesn't always play in the left. I have him as a left winger, but he sometimes plays as a central attacking midfielder. That's when they're in the 4-2-3-1, and sometimes plays as the centre forward in that 4-3-3 too. So a bit of a roving player, but imagine him kind of on the left or centre, on the upper part of the field. And people who are familiar with Liverpool will be familiar with him kind of coming in from the left. Okay, well, he scored 3 of their 16 goals in qualifying, and he started all 4 of their games since the 2021 World Cup. He had an ugly collision in that cup, actually, and true to Mane, he scored a goal fairly soon after and then was subbed out as a concussion risk. What a guy. And he played as a centre forward in game 1 of that tournament and a central attacking midfielder in game 2. So kind of, as we said, all over the place, but then a left forward for most of the tournament. And he scored 3 goals in that tournament and won the Golden Ball Award and named to the team of the tournament, of course. But I was worried when I saw that heavy clash of heads. Okay, and I don't think I need to go into a lot of detail on him. He was a starter in the 2018 World Cup and 2017 African Cup. The 2015 African Cup was his first one, even though his first cap was in 2012. First appeared in 2015 African Cup. Anyway, a very familiar name And of course, it would be earth-shattering if he was not selected. Can you imagine? Okay, moving on to Keita Balde. He's coded as a left winger / forward, and he scored one of the goals in qualifying, one of the 16 goals. But he didn't start any of the games since the 2021 African Cup. But he subbed in for 2 and was on the bench for 2. In the African Cup itself last January, he started game 1, but he was subbed out and he lost his starting position. So only appeared as a substitute in game 2 after that. So that's the reason, doesn't actually seem to be on the field that much. And that's the reason I have him as a possible, whereas in my mind, I consider him more likely than that. He's been with the team since 2016 and he has 40 caps and 6 goals. He is 27 years old. And he was with Cagliari in Italy, but he left them in 2022 and is currently unattached. Before Cagliari, he was with Monaco in the French league for 4 years, but he was loaned out to Sampdoria in Italy and then Inter Milan in Italy in 2018 and 19. He was born in Spain, actually, but actually seemed to move over from Spain to Italy at the start of his senior career. His first African Cup was in 2017, where he was a starter, and he was also on the World Cup squad, but he was on the bench there, appearing only in game 3. And a starter in the 2019 and 2021 African Cups. But as I said, lost his starting position in 2021 and hasn't played a lot since. So just as a possible, but again, kind of due to a lack of other prospects, I would be surprised if he wasn't at least selected for the team. But maybe as a substitute. The last player we're going to deal with on the left wing is Mame Baba Thiam. But he last appeared in the African Cup in January, so didn't play any of those recent 4 games. And in the African Cup, he only appeared in game 2, so he was a bench player. He has a long history with clubs. He's 29 years old, but again, we're seeing a definite pattern here. 29 years old, but his first cap was in 2020. So that would have been when he was 28 years old, and he only has 4 caps. He currently plays for Kayserispor in Turkey, but wow, he's played for a whole lot of clubs. I could regale you with club names all game here, but he was with the Inter Milan Youth Club in Italy. But yeah, he's just seems to be off the squad now, so not much point in going into a lot of detail on him. But nevertheless, he kind of made our list because he has been involved to some degree in recent times. Okay, we're going to move over to right wingers. So just like the left wingers, they tend to line up as a right forward in a 4-3-3 lineup. And I should actually say that well, let me just go through the candidates here. There really is only one in Ismail Assar. We have him as the definite level, Ismail Assar. And then we have a couple of players at the possible but unlikely level in Abdullah Sima and in Demba Sek. And finally, Sada Thioub seems to be off the squad. But, when we put a player on the list like that, it means they were involved recently enough that they might be an outside consideration. All right, well, going back to Ismail Assar, interestingly, he and Sadio Mane have kind of switched positions from the left side to the right side. So all of you Liverpool fans who imagine Sadio Mane coming in from the left may now have to view him like Mo Salah coming in from the right. I don't know if that's going to continue. I think it's the last two or three games since the African Cup when they did that, but it kind of messes up my head because I see Sadio Mane on the left side of the field and Ismail Assar on the right side. Anyway, Ismail Assar scored 3 of their 16 goals in qualifying, including a late winner. I'll just say including a late winner because the details are confusing me there. I didn't write it up properly, I guess. And he's played all 4 of their games since the 2021 African Cup. And in the African Cup, a funny little story, he was subbed into games 5 and 6 and went on to start in the final. But he wasn't on the bench for games 1 to 4. And the reason is his club, Watford, didn't release him. And the reason they didn't release him was because Senegal didn't get the paperwork in on time. Kind of a funny story. So showed up late to the African Cup. He's been with Watford since 2019, and he was with Reims in France and Metz in France before that. And he's been with the national team since 2016, and is nevertheless quite young at 24 years old. And in his time has got 47 caps and 10 goals. So his first tournament was the 2017 African Cup, but he was a bench player there. But he was a starter in the 2018 World Cup. Actually, that's where he made kind of an impression on me. But the truth is he kind of lacked a good final touch in that tournament, missing a few good chances there. He was a starter in the 2019 African Cup, and I've described in the 2021 African Cup, just joined the squad late because of a kind of a paperwork error. Okay, well, so I'm going to, I have to go over the left and right wingers there. I'll do that kind of in a summary after I finish this part. So Abdallah Sima is actually last appeared for the national team in September 21, but was out with an injury until after the African Cup there in January 2022. However, he hasn't been selected for any of the games since, even though he's over his injury, as I recall. So he's been with the team since 2021 and has 4 caps and is very young at 21 years old. And he's with Brighton in England, but again, another player who's on a roster, but I haven't actually seen him on the field. I see why, because he's been loaned to Angers in France, and he was loaned to Stoke in England before that. So Brighton's doing quite well, so it would be really good if he could get on the first team, as a regular starter with them. But I guess it won't happen before the Cup here. And he wasn't selected for the African Cup in 2021. So, but, kind of his name is in and about. I don't know why I talk so much about him, so I'll make it faster with Demba Sek, who is also in the possible but unlikely category. And he has no caps for the national team. However, he did appear on the bench in June 2022, and he plays for Torino in Italy. He's 21 years old, so possibly an up-and-comer, although this World Cup may come too soon for him. We'll see in the September games whether he makes inroads. Finally, we have Sada Thioub. Sada Thioub was selected for the 2019 African Cup. And I'm just going to check and see how likely we thought he was for the... we thought he was possible, but unlikely for the 2021 Cup. And that turned out to be the case, as he didn't make the squad. He's with Angers in France, but only played 7 caps in 2019. So seems to be off the squad, even though he's just 26 years old. Again, we'll maybe give some more details if he comes back into the picture. So let's summarize the kind of the winger positions. So we have Sadio Mane, who will definitely make the squad. I think the earth will crack in half if he doesn't. And we'll put Keita Balde. I'm going to put him as making the squad and being a substitute when he gets there. On the right wing, I think Ismail Assar is a definite. And then we have a couple of possible candidates, but as of yet, they seem unlikely. So again, it's kind of the lack of options that can make us more confident about who the starters and the ones making the team are. Okay, let's move on to the forward line. And here we include attacking midfielders, secondary strikers, and out forwards. So we begin actually with just one attacking midfielder. And we have him at the possible level. And this is Iliman Ndiaye. Iliman Ndiaye. So a new name for me. He was born in France. And he plays for Sheffield United in England. And yes, he is new. He got his first and only cap in 2022, and he is 22 years old. And the reason we have him here is because he got his first cap in June 2022. He didn't start any of the two games there, but he was subbed in for one and on the bench for the other. So kind of a latecomer to the system, I guess, a bit like Sada Thioub, a bit like Demba Sek. We'll have to wait for the September games to see if he makes further inroads into the teams. But honestly, given the lack of pool of players they had to choose from, seems like they need to choose a couple of others. So he may be one of them. For secondary striker, he's the only attacking midfielder or the only player coded as an attacking midfielder who's been playing for them recently. And in terms of secondary strikers, there are none. So we go on to our last group, the forwards. And I'm going to kind of introduce them first. I'm going to talk about Mbai Niang, who seems to be off the squad now. He was the starter in 2018 World Cup and 2019 African Cup, but he's not there any longer. I'll come back to that. That leaves a gap, and that gap is going to be filled by some of these players here. We have Boulaye Ndiaye, but I got to put him as injured. And we have Famara Diédhiou, who I put as a likely candidate. We have Habib Diallo, who I put as a possible candidate. And we have Bamba Dieng, also possible, and Mbai Diagne, and he seems to be off the squad. So that is far fewer forwards than most teams bring to cups. We'll talk about that when we kind of talk about the team in general. But let's go back to the beginning and talk a little bit about Mbai Niang. So this is an interesting story. As I said, he was a starter in the 2018 World Cup. That was his first tournament. And in the 2019 African Cup. And I got to see what we had him coded as. We had him as seemingly off the squad even in 2021, and that turned out to be the case because his last appearance for the national team was in November 2019. So a pretty sudden exit for Mbai Niang. So his career was only from 2017 to 19. But it was 23 caps and 4 goals. And even now, he's just 28 years old. So there is the chance of him coming back. In terms of club affiliations, he was with some pretty big clubs. And I think this may give us a clue here. He was born in France and played for French clubs and worked his way up through Montpellier in France to Genoa in Italy, to Watford in England, to AC Milan in Italy. But since then, it's kind of gone downhill. He was loaned to Torino and then bought by Torino. And then he went to Reims in France. But from Reims, he was loaned to Al Ahly in Saudi Arabia. And he was with Bordeaux in France in 2021-22. And now is with Auxerre in France. since 2022. So kind of going a little bit downhill from the peak of AC Milan, which was 2012 to 18, although he was loaned out towards the end especially. And I think that is the reason that he is no longer on the team, because of a drop in performance, a steady drop in performance. So when I was investigating it, I saw that he had been in trouble a few times because of driving incidents, driving without a license or getting into accidents. He even got an 18-month suspended jail sentence, actually. But that doesn't seem to have been the reason, because that was all before his appearance in the World Cup and African Cup in 2018 and 19. So it really does seem to be a drop of form. And Senegal still had him as a starter in 2019, although he seemed to be playing less well for clubs. But by 2021, November 2019 was his last cap for the team, so definitely seems to be off. But for 2 tournaments there, he was the starter, so it became a bit of a gap to fill. So that leads us into our discussion of the current players. And Boulaye Daye is, we would have him as likely. He started 2 of their 4 games after the African Cup, but then he got injured. So in June, he was listed as injured with the dreaded medial collateral ligament damage. Again, not always a long-term injury, but usually a long-term injury. So that may last until the Cup. So he actually... Okay, I'll give the bio on him. He first joined the team in 2020. Again, a bit of a late starter there, because he is 26 years old, so would have been 24 when he joined the team. 17 caps and 2 goals. Plays for Villarreal in Spain, but he was actually loaned to Salernitana in Italy. Since 2022, that's where he is now. Born in France, and was a starter for the 2021 African Cup. That was his first tournament. So if they were looking to him to replace Mbaye Niang, now that's put in jeopardy with his injury. So next in line is Famara Diédhiou. Famara Diédhiou has started. He started the first of their 4 recent games, and then he subbed in for 1 game and was on the bench for the 2 others. And as I said, Boulaye Daye was the starter in 2019, but I guess you can have more than 1 forward. That's why I'm getting confused here. He gained a starting position for the last 4 games of the African Cup in 2021. So he has actually been on the squad since 2014, and he has 25 caps and 10 goals. He's 29 years old now, and he plays for Alanyaspor in Turkey, but he was with Bristol City. That's a second division or championship club in England. He was there for 4 years. So Connor was quite familiar with him, and Connor is quite familiar with him, and really liked him as a player for Bristol City in England. Connor's more familiar with the championship than I am. However, after making the African Cup squad in 2017, where he appeared only as a substitute, he didn't make the World Cup 2018 or the African Cup 2019 squad. So he did make the African Cup 2021 squad. So it's a kind of fairly new, if we're viewing him in terms of the guy who's going to take that forward position. So I wouldn't say he has a firm claim on it yet, but with Boulaye Daye being injured, he might be thrust into the position. But we have him as a likely candidate, definitely to be on the squad, but a likely candidate in terms of making the squad. He did, after all, score 4 of their 16 goals in qualifying, including a hat-trick. And he was their top scorer, but still, that still didn't earn him the starting position at the beginning of the African Cup. Okay, 2 possible candidates in Habib Diallo and Bamba Dieng. So Habib Diallo scored 1 of their 16 goals in qualifying, and he started 1 of their 4 games since the African Cup and was on the bench for 2 others. In the African Cup last January, he was just a sub, though. He did start 1 game. He started game 3, but we'll say he was a sub on the team. And that was his first tournament, even though he's been with the team since 2018 and, was playing with the team before the 2019 tournament. He didn't make it onto the team. He has 14 caps and 2 goals and is 27 years old, plays for Strasbourg in France. So a possible candidate, and again, if Boulaye Dia is injured, that increases his chances of getting there. So I would almost pretty much say he's likely, as is Bamba Dieng. So Bamba Dieng, he actually started none of their 4 games since the recent African Cup, but he did sub in for 2, although he wasn't selected for the last 2 matches, the 2 African Cup 2023 qualifiers. So I'm not sure why. He's been with the team since 2021, and he has 11 caps, but just 1 goal as a forward. And he's very young at 22 years old. Hang on. He plays for Marseille in France. Again, he was on the squad for the African Cup, actually not on the bench for games 1 and 2, but when he was on the bench, he subbed in to several of the games afterwards. And Bamba Dieng, he had several good chances actually, but didn't always make the best of them. Sorry, I needed to take a drink of water there. Okay. So there, Bamba Dieng, again, possible, but given the lack of other players, likely, I would say. Finally, we have Mbaye Diagne. Mbaye Diagne, we will make short work of because he played last for the team in March 2021. And also, he's a forward who's been with the team since 2018, but only 11 caps and 0 goals, which is never good as a forward. He plays in Turkey, and he was selected for the African Cup 2019 team as a sub, but not selected for the African Cup 2021. So a very outside chance there. Again, it may be possible because there are few subs to choose from. So I'm going to summarize. And I'm going to say Ilman Ndiaye, the attacking midfielder. I'm going to guess that he makes the squad because they have so few players to choose from, but as a substitute. And then I have to choose Famara Diédhiou as the starter, and he is kind of beginning to earn that position more rather than getting it through other players ahead of him disappearing. Boulaye Dia, they would definitely choose if he's fit, but that's a question. And so I'm going to say Habib Diallo and Bamba Dieng make the team, but are substitutes. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the player-by-player thing. So we'll begin with some notes going back to the beginning of the podcast. So we've seen that they've switched to a 4-3-3 formation. And we've also seen that they have a very stable squad with the same players for the most part in the same positions. and even the same players usually starting in their positions with regular backups that we know. So not a huge pool of players to choose from for Senegal, but a very steady group of players they have. So generally, when I've seen this in other tournaments, they tend to be a strong team because they've played a lot together. The danger, though, is that if one of them gets injured, like we saw with a couple of players here, Boulay Dia, that the player replacing them hasn't played that much, or they may lack substitutes to bring in, or lack substitutes of a similar quality. So that is a bit of a risk that Senegal runs. However, having seen them in the 2019 and 21 African Cup, I would say they're the best African team and a real threat. And on that note, leading on to club affiliations here, they probably have the best club affiliations of any African team, with players playing for top teams. So they have a couple of players with Chelsea in England. They have 2 players with Paris Saint-Germain, 2 other players with Premier League clubs in England. And then Bayern Munich is also represented. And just generally good quality clubs, second tier teams after the ones I've mentioned. Leicester City is there too, so that's another Premier League club, and then teams in France like Marseille, and then secondary teams in France like Nancy and Reims and stuff. In fact, all of them playing in Europe. So they won't be really taken by surprise by European teams. Actually, that brings me on to another note. It'll be interesting to see how they do against European teams. In the past, it was always kind of African teams being a bit overwhelmed at the Cup, whether it was a bit of stage fright or whether the region was actually weaker. Those lines are kind of disappearing a little bit. And when you have a situation like this, all of the players playing in Europe, they're hardly going to be taken by surprise. And they're playing for big teams, so they're not going to be stage struck. They're not going to get stage fright because they're used to playing pretty big games. Okay, we'll take a look at their age and experience. And they do have a lot of players who are above 30. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players above 30, and most of the squad above 25 years old. So among the players who are serious candidates, most of them are 25 years old or more. The biggest candidate below 25 is Ismaila Sarr. But the other ones are all kind of probably bench players rather than starters. Papa Gay and Papa Mata Sarr being amongst the youngest players there. In terms of, so the average age on the team is 27.8 years old, which is quite old. When we do the update podcast, I'll be able to compare that with other teams a bit better. The average number of caps they have is 26.5, which is fairly high. I don't know really how much that tells us there. So we'll move on to the things to watch, or the players to watch. Well, at the back, they have a very solid and experienced defense. So they proved their worth against African teams, allowing just, get this, 3 goals over their 14 games in the last 2 African Cups. 3 goals over 14 games. So obviously that's a solid defense. There's always the question, though, of how it's going to hold up against teams from other regions. So in the 2018 World Cup, they allowed 4 goals to Poland, Japan, and Colombia. Neither of those teams, with the exception of Colombia perhaps, are really known to be big scoring teams. Interestingly, in this tournament, they have Qatar, Netherlands, and Ecuador, which on the whole are much more attacking teams than they met in 2018. Qatar really has an impressive offense. I think they're going to be a handful to deal with. So it'll be interesting to see how this defense performs against them. Moving on to the attack, I'm going to give you some percentages here of the players expected to get goals. So on the wings, we have Sadio Mane and Ismail Assar. We can almost view them as forwards, and they are in a 4-3-3, along with Keita Balde, actually. And then we have the out-and-out forwards in Boulaye Dia, Famara Diédhiou, and the less experienced Habib Diallo. So among those players, just think for a second, who do you think has the highest percentage of goals? Well, most of us would probably say Sadio Mane, and he has an impressive 36%. So that's basically scoring a goal slightly more than 1 in 3 games. But actually, the highest percent is Diédhiou Famara, who has 10 goals in 24 games. So again, another argument in favor of him being the starting forward. Third among them is not one of the forwards, but actually the right winger, kind of right forward, Ismail Assar, who has a 21% goal ratio. That's 10 goals in 47 matches. And also up there is Keita Balde, 6 goals in 40 matches, 15%. That's actually not that high, but it is higher than all of the other forwards, Boulaye Dia, Abdoulaye Diallo, and Habib Diallo. Habib Diallo and Boulaye Dia, who only have less than 15%. Although they haven't played that many games, but 2 in 14 or 2 in 17 games is not that great. The other player, Abdou Diallo, also has 12%, but he is a central defender. So I think he goes up for corners and nods a couple in. So 12% is good for a defender, but not that great for Boulaye Dia and Habib Diallo, who are forwards. Okay, and moving on to new players, we have a few new, though none have made real inroads into the team. So we have central defense player Alpha Junku, who we saw earlier. Spain and Senegal are possibly arguing over. He plays for Granada in Spain, but was loaned to Barcelona, probably Barcelona B in Spain, but looks like a possible up-and-comer for them. In attacking midfield position, who I think is actually going to make the squad, is Iliman Ndiaye, and he is currently with Sheffield United. He just played his first cap recently in the 4 games since the African Cup there. And we have right winger Demba Seck, who is also very young. No caps for the national team, but he was on the bench in June of 2022 for the one of the last 2 of those 4 games since the African Cup. So the tournament, it seems to me, will come too soon for Alpha Junku and Demba Seck, but Iliman Ndiaye, I think, will make the squad because they have kind of a lack of attackers. The next category is notable absences. So I'll just go over some of the big players who have left the team. And Salif Sane in central defense was off the team, so left a bit of a hole there. And that hole seems to be filled now by Abdou Diallo. Okay, also on the right wing, a couple of players leaving a bit of a problem for them to decide on a right winger. A right back. So Musa Wag and Lamine Gassama now seem to be off the squad, and replacing them is Bouna Sarr, although he sometimes move up to the midfield. So during the course of this podcast, I speculated actually that Yusuf Sabali may be the one to replace him if Bouna moves into the midfield. Another notable absence is Mbaye Niang as a forward, who was a forward during the World Cup and the 2019 African Cup, but kind of made a sudden exit from the team, hasn't been called up. And they're having a bit of trouble actually replacing his position because Boulaye Dia is injured now. And it looks like Detu will make his way into the starting position there. But it's still a bit up in the air. Okay, and then finally, injuries. I expect that Crepin Diatta will be recovered in time for the Cup. However, Boulaye Dia is less certain because it's a kind of seems like a long-term injury he's got. So we'll keep an eye on all of those things. Okay, well, we're going to end the podcast with just a review of what we think is the starting lineup here. So manager Aliou Cisse will definitely be leading the team through the Cup. Not much doubt about starting goalkeeper Edouard Mendy, but we think Seny Dieng and Alfred Gomis will probably be the two that make the squad as backups. In central defence, Kalidou Koulibaly and Abdou Diallo seem fairly set in their roles, with Papa Abou Cisse and possibly Abdoulaye Seck. Cisse is likely to make the squad, Abdoulaye Seck a little less likely. At the left-back position, Saliou Ciss seems to have the edge in a race with Fodo Ballo-Touré, but both of them seem to have a fairly good bid. It'll be one or the other. At right back, Bouna Sarr, there is a chance that Bouna Sarr will move up into the midfield and Yusuf Sabali will make the squad. A possible other selection there is Ibrahima Mbaye. In the defensive midfielder, Napoli's Mendy is for sure, and Papa Gueye we consider making the squad, but as a substitute. Central midfielders, Idrissa Gueye and Cheikhou Kouyaté we consider starters, and Papa Matar Sarr we think is going to make the squad but be a substitute. On the left wing, no doubt Sadio Mane will be there and as a starter, and possible, maybe a little stronger than possible, Keita Balde, although he may not play as that left forward in their 4-3-3 system. We'll put him as a substitute. On the right side, right winger, Ismaila Sarr is pretty much a shoe-in and not much competition for that position. And in the attacking midfielder, I'm going to say Iliman Ndiaye, the young player, will, is he young? It doesn't matter, new to the squad at least, will make the squad but as a substitute. And just for a lack of other forwards, Famara Diédhiou, who's certainly not a bad forward, just hasn't really established himself in the position, but likely will now, especially because Boulaye Dia is an injury doubt. So we think Boulaye Dia will definitely make it if he's fit, but otherwise they'll be relying on Habib Diallo and Bemba Dieng, who will probably be substitutes if they make the squad. So we're going to come back in November to find out just how wrong we were in our thinking here. And certainly there's always a few surprises at the end, injuries or new players that make it in. So keep in mind, or keep your eye out for that update, both on the players and on the teams. And that'll probably be in early November. And otherwise, you can find us at soccerphiles. If you search Soccerphiles Canada in Google, that's Soccerphiles with a PH in the middle and an S at the end. And our website is soccerphiles.captivate.fm. And you can also check our show notes for a bit of direction and, checking our previous series on the podcast and all that. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.